The shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School has once again brought our nation's gun violence epidemic into full view. And even though New York has the third lowest rate of gun-related death in the United States, and even though we have strong laws, and we have effective policing, and we have community-based programs intended to prevent gun violence, we are not immune. Each year, Mr. President, roughly 900 New Yorkers are killed by guns. Mr. President, that is 900 too many. And today we're talking about several important steps we can take to bring that number down. 5 years ago, in the wake of another school shooting, and in the wake of a violent incident in Webster, New York, in which our first responders were specifically targeted, members of this House and the other House of the legislature and the governor came together to pass the SAFE Act. We instituted background checks on all gun buyers. We instituted an effective ban on high-capacity ammunition magazines. We outlawed the sale of certain dangerous assault weapons that the legislature deemed appropriate to outlaw. And we included many other provisions like additional funding for school safety. It was not a perfect bill, but it has served us well. And the sky did not fall, Mr. President. The police did not go door to door taking hunters' guns. The right of New Yorkers to have guns to defend their homes was not infringed. New Yorkers' rights were protected, and so were their lives. Today, we have the opportunity to do that again, to come together for the greater good and pass a common-sense law that will save lives. The law I'm talking about, Mr. President, creates extreme risk protection orders and empowers family members and police to stop gun violence. I'm proud to sponsor that bill in this chamber with Senator Brad Hoylman, the co-prime sponsor. Here's how the bill works. The sad truth is that people close to those who commit gun violence often see warning signs before the tragedy occurs, and they are powerless to intervene. The teenager who's been arrested for the shooting in Parkland, Florida, had left threatening social media posts. He'd had dozens of contacts with law enforcement, and he had a history of violence. People reached out to the authorities several times, but they did nothing. It is appropriate for us to have a conversation about what law enforcement may or should have done in that situation, but it's unclear that there was much they could have done under current law. If legislation like the bill we're proposing today had been in place, people would have been able to present evidence to a judge, prove that this individual was likely to harm others, and take real action to prevent this tragedy by restricting his access to guns. Similar to orders of protections, extreme risk protection orders can be requested by family members, household members, and law enforcement. And they respect New Yorkers' due process rights while allowing a judge to temporarily limit an individual's access to guns. To issue an emergency ERPO order requiring someone to surrender their guns and prohibiting them from purchasing guns, a judge must find there's probable cause someone is likely to harm themselves or others. That's a high standard. After that emergency order is issued, the respondent is entitled to a hearing within 3 to 6 business days. At that hearing, to keep the order in place, the judge would have to rule that there is clear and convincing evidence that the respondent is likely to harm themselves or others. And even when a judge issues a year-long extreme risk protection order, the respondent is entitled to another hearing during that year to contest the order. And unless that order is renewed by a judge who finds in a new hearing that the danger hasn't dissipated, the order expires after 12 months. Connecticut, Indiana, California, Washington, and Oregon have enacted similar laws, and they've withstood legal challenges, and they work. A peer-reviewed study by researchers from Duke University found that the Connecticut law led to a measurable reduction in the state's suicide rate. For every 10 to 20 risk warrants issued in Connecticut, 1 life was saved, and many other violent incidents were avoided. And roughly 1/3 of those who received ERPOs in Connecticut received mental health services after the order was issued. Mr. President, we have an opportunity to save lives by enacting this law. That's why it's gaining momentum. Just yesterday, the Assembly passed it last year, and just yesterday, the Assembly Codes Committee, Republicans and Democrats, voted to approve this law unanimously and send it to the floor of the Assembly. 28 senators, including Senator Hoylman and myself, have signed on as sponsors, and the law has been endorsed by a coalition of organizations including New Yorkers Against Gun Violence, Giffords Courage to Fight Gun Violence, Everytown for Gun Safety, Moms Demand Action, Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence, the Citizens Crime Commission of New York City, the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence, and Prosecutors Against Gun Violence, co-chaired by our own Cy Vance. Here in New York, we've stepped up before to save lives taken by preventable gun violence and the extraordinary number of injuries caused by gun violence, and we must do it again. Thank you.